Hey everyone, welcome back. I got a question for you today. Have you ever wanted to do Steel Path Defection? Me neither, but if you've ever wondered how it would turn out, well, I guess I have a short interesting video to show you. Now, I don't actually do Defection, but I was invited on this run by Depths, a fellow mutual part of our Power Creep stream team. She was running a charity streamathon a while back, and one of the last stretch goals was doing a level cap Steel Path Defection on an all Hydroid team. Why Hydroid? Because Hydroid Prime trailer, haha funny, but yeah, we didn't think it would actually happen. But our community smashed the goal, so the next thing I knew I was roped into this painful experience. But we did get something out of it, and there was some interesting theory craft as well that might have a future use, so let's see what I learned from this, shall we? Being a Hydroid, there isn't that much his kit can do to contribute to Defection. His one is super outdated and now literally does nothing because the corrosive augment can no longer full strip. Tidal Surge is a handy mobility tool and probably the useful part of his kit for this mission. Undertow? Useless, because Defection requires you to follow the Defectors around, so hiding in a puddle just makes you fall behind. Tentacle Swarm can be used to create choke points, but it's expensive to cast, seems to still let enemies through, doesn't affect overguarded Eximus, and just all around isn't an enjoyable ability to use. It was also level cap Steel Path intended, where endurance means enemy damage will scale faster than their EHP. And this is actually a problem because Defectors can start getting one shot, and the first time a Defector downs, you have 5 seconds to begin reviving them. If they down a second time, they instantly die. And you only get 10 deaths to spare in a run. So we needed a foolproof way to keep them alive at the higher levels, and this is where Banish came in, since Hydroid's kit lacks anything applicable. Banish makes them unhittable to anything except Eximus targets or other rifted enemies, and Banish's augment, Rift Haven, continuously heals them by 25% HP per second as long as they remain rifted, and also even scales with strength. This helps with chip damage, though in the long run endurance, even this will fall off when they start getting one-shots, so managing Eximus units becomes essential since you need to kill them before they can touch the Defectors. But here's the thing, we learned that Defection level scaling peaks after 3 hours. Most modern game modes like Disruption, Flood, and Cascade have increasingly steep level scaling over time. Older modes like Defection actually flatten out at one point and stop scaling steeper. Defection only goes up by about 600 to 700 levels an hour once you reach the 3rd hour. This meant it actually takes about 14 hours to level cap Defection and nearly 1,000 squads saved. Once we realized this is what it would take, well, we stopped. We still made it to 133 squads saved in 3 hours. There are a couple interesting synergies we came up with to even make it this far, so let's talk about those, since it might be useful in the future. Hydroid's build looks like this. It's a standard Brief Respite shield gating setup. What is our shield gate ability today? This is actually a really fun one. It's Tidal Surge. DE recently updated this ability a couple of months ago so that you can early cancel it by just jumping, and can then immediately recast it to go into another direction. This way you can quickly get around, but more importantly, it lets you immediately get out of danger while regenerating your shields, and it also has 0 cast time. Bonus points for morbing across the tile at morph speed and gathering up enemies. Brief Respite with 3 Augur mods today, including 2 from your pistol, will make Tidal Surge regenerate 135 shields per cast, which is enough to fill all your shields, so long as you're using a Decay Dragon key. Prime sure-footed for obvious reasons in Defection, but also because our trash mob clears a Glaive Prime today. An AoE can very easily knock yourself down otherwise. Duration is super important to make sure our banished Defectors stay that way as long as possible. We don't need range, and in fact actually don't want much since less range means smaller banish cone on cast. The worst thing that can happen in endurance is banishing enemy units alongside your Defectors because you won't be able to kill the enemy units rifted, and they will also be able to kill your rifted Defectors. You also don't have a way to go into rift yourself to push them back out, so the only way to unrift enemy units is to hold banish down, which deactivates all currently active banish casts including the Defectors. So less range is better here. Besides, the speed of Tidal Surge scales off of duration and not range, so you'll still be able to zoom around. Rolling Guard is still here to get rid of pesky status effects, as well as a bigger window to cast Tidal Surge before your health is vulnerable. We're running Equilibrium for energy today as we don't have Energize on the build. It's easy to kill with Glaive Prime, so the health orbs dropped from enemies triggered by your Panzer will easily give you back enough energy to properly shield gate with Tidal Surge or banish targets. REVENANT, as I mentioned, granting 25% HP per second heal to Defectors on this build, and finally we have Vigorous swap and Arcane Fury as sources of base damage. While Fury is just raw buffs, weapon damage buffs like Vigorous swap or Vex Armor for using Chroma double dip on Glaive explosion damage scaling. This means we get way more DPS out of Glaive Prime by bringing Vigorous swap, and by detonating Glaives over the head of enemies, you can easily trigger Arcane Consequence, which gives us plus 60% parkour velocity, making it easier to get around the map and protecting Defectors as they head to the escape ships. We want Vigorous swap to trigger so that we can double dip weapon damage bonuses on our Glaive Prime, but this requires an actual weapon holster to throw the Glaive. Dual wield setups like Epitaph or Nuke with Glaive Prime don't work since there is no actual holster, so I had to resort to a primary. While I do have Epitaph on the loadout for the Augur bonus and primer potential with way more status effects, the Tenet Envoy I'm bringing is the actual primer that allows Glaive Prime to proc Vigorous swap. Why Envoy? Because it is innate cold, and you can even get a Toxic Progenitor, making the AoE be innate viral with 0 elemental mods used. This grants us a bonus slot for more utility when using Envoy as a primer. Envoy also holster reloads naturally when not using it, and this innate perk stacks with the Sunset bonus, so priming enemies with Envoy and then throwing your Glaive to slash proc them will passively reload the Envoy shots when your melee is out. This is the Envoy build I was using. It's full quality of life with every fire rate mod you can imagine to make up for its low baseline. Then we pile on multi-shot and status chance for our best odds at priming viral. Prime Firestorm also extends the hitbox out to 13.28 meters, letting a prime crowd super easily. I would still recommend bringing Vigilante supplies to deal with the ammo drain when using it as a primer, Merciless for faster reloads if you do it manually, but otherwise, relying on the innate holster reload speed with a Sunset bonus should be enough. The Epitaph is whatever, but what's important is your pistol having 2 Augur mods equipped to make sure Hydroid's Tidal Surge will restore all the shields. Again, pistol ammo mutation can be useful here to recoup the shot spammed on priming if that's what you're intending on doing. The Glaive Prime is a stock, heavy attack build, with volatile quick return being the highlight, as it grants plus 3 meter blast radius to the Glaive, boosting us to a 7.8 meter radius on the explosion. You're free to pick whether there's double sacrificials here or just sacrificial steel with prime pressure point. The double sack set doesn't give enough crit to push you above 200% for only oranges on heavy throw detonations, so honestly I would rather run prime pressure point for the higher base damage. Prime smites are important because they double dip for 2.4 times more damage when using a bleed proc build like the force procs from Glaive Prime. Corrupt Charge for 2 times combo and stacking both Killing Blow with Amalgam Organ Shatter since it will significantly cut down our windup time to just 0.5 seconds. Prime Fury also helps with the attack animation that leads into the heavy swing charge. You could alternatively slot Gladiator Might here if you don't feel like you need the attack speed bonus, and using this Glaive is pretty easy. You just shoot the floor to prime enemies in the 13.28 meter radius with viral, and then throw Glaive and detonate it. The Envoy will holster reload the shots used while the Glaive is out and detonating. The Companion remains a Panzer due to their infinite lives via Panzer Devolution, but also viral quills to boost our damage more. Even if we don't shoot our Envoy and camp viral stacks, getting some stacks in general is always useful. Martyr keeps you alive with a quarter-second health gate if you would have died, but it kills your cat in the process. Tech Assault can trigger 60% of the time to block fatal hits against your cat, including when it kills itself with Martyr. The viral quills will trigger tile-wide pet assists due to their spore-spreading nature like Sarin. Pet Assist triggers Synth Deconstruct for bonus health orbs, which you can always pick up at full HP due to Synth Fiber. These will proc Equilibrium for energy to Hydroid, and this is how we sustain his energy without Energize. Radar and Vacuum are the typical rest. Of course, for endurance runs, we opted for Zariman since Protective Sling not only gives you 5 seconds of iframes and heals you, but it also protects Defectors in later parts of the run where enemies start having ridiculous damage scaling. But how do we make it work? Well, that's simple. You console rush the Defector spawns when possible and safe to save 40 seconds. Then you should make a mad dash to them and immediately cast Banish for protection and Rift Haven healing. Generally, I will not reset the Banish timer by holding down the ability until the forward group of Defectors travels back from C or B to A. And then I reset cast and send them to the escape ship. Full Escort is recommended at higher levels because there tend to be enemy spawns near the ship path exit. All it takes is an Eximus unit or two to spawn right beside the ship and start causing unnecessary. Besides that, it's just shoot floor with Envoy and throw Glaive to bleed proc everything to death. Throwing Glaives above heads will also trigger Arcane Consequence, our other arcane which lets you rush Defector spawns faster with the increased parkour speed. That's honestly it on how we ran the Defection streams. 3 hours is plenty, and with all the attempts that was a 14-hour total, the enemies reached level 1000, and at that point Eximus units nearly one-shot Defectors. We didn't want to go another 11 hours on the 3-hour run, so hopefully today's footage at level 1k Steel Path Defection is enough. While I do hate this mode, coming up with an actual strat was fun and kept me awake. I still wouldn't recommend the game mode since it's so slow, but I also learned that I'd honestly rather run Defection than Armageddon. Says a lot about the pacing in that new game mode, doesn't it? What were your most painful Warframe mission attempts? Let me know down in the comments. If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like, or better yet subscribe. 79.5% of you are not subscribed. I'm trying my best to get new information out always, as soon as possible, like I've done with covering the new Echoes of Zariman update. Stick around if you want to see interesting memes and builds on a nearly daily basis. Don't miss out on any of that, do you? That'll be it for this video, thank you all for watching, and see you all next time.